A woman in a tight jumpsuit named Vera spends her days practicing yoga and creating small sculptures. Meanwhile, a prominent plastic surgeon named Robert talking to students about his experience with face transplants and why it is so important. Afterward, he pulls into a parking lot of a maternity hospital and a nurse hangs him something. Back home, he goes to the lab in the basement of his house to conduct experiments. Afterward, Robert returns to his bedroom and watches Vera through a hidden camera in her room. Robert takes the opium box and goes to her room where he notices that the girl has damaged herself with a paper page from a magazine. Robert carries her to the operating room and saves her life. While Robert treats her wounds, the girl asks when it will all over, but Robert only remains silent in response, and it becomes clear that the girl has been his captive for years. In the house, in addition to Robert and Vera, there is a woman who lives in the same house as Robert's manager named Marilia and knows what Robert is doing and even helps him. One morning, Marilia brings Robert the animal's blood and he goes to his laboratory. With the help of this blood, he creates a layer of artificial skin, after which he crafts it onto Vera's body. Robert experiments on Vera and burning her with a torch, but the girl feels no pain. A few months later, Robert presents his artificial skin discovery named Gal to the scientific community. Robert claims that the skin is resistant to burns and mosquito bites, and the experiment on mice have shown excellent results. After his report, the head of the medical association asks Robert why he chose that particular name, Gal, for his creation. Robert reveals that he named it in honor of his wife, who died in a fire. During the conversation, the scientist learns that Robert has been working on the genetic mutation of human cells and forbids him from further experimentation because it is against bioethics. That same night, Robert comes to Vera and tells her that their experiments are over. Vera says that in that case, they can get married and start a normal family, but Robert walks away from the conversation. The next morning, Marilia asks Robert to get rid of Vera because as her resemblance of Robert's late wife, she may get them into trouble, but Robert does not dare to do so and leaves. Later on, a man in a carnival costume approaches Robert's house and tells Marilia that he is her son, Zeka, whom she has not seen her for 10 years. She lets him in and invites him to the table. During the conversation, Marilia watches a news report and learns that her son was involved in a robbery. Zeka wants his mother to hide him for a while and Robert to change his appearance, but Marilia replies that Robert will kill him as soon as he lays on the operating table for what he did, but we still don't know what he has done. While looking for a drink in the kitchen, Zeka notices a monitor showing Vera's room. Zeka recognizes Vera and an old acquaintance and asks his mother to tell him which room she is in, but Marilia pulls a gun on him and demands that he must leave. Zeka disarms his mother and ties her up, then goes in search of Vera. After a brief search, Zeka opens the door to Vera's room. The girl knocks him down and tries to escape, but he catches her and calls her by the name of Gal. He asks the girl how she survived after he left her burning in the car. Vera decides to play along so she can escape with him from the house. At this time, Robert returns home and finds Marilia tied to the chair. Then looked at the screen, he sees Zeka is performing forceful acts on Vera. In anger, Robert goes to Vera's room and shoots Zeka. While Robert on the task of disposing the body, Marilia tells Vera that Zeka and Robert are brothers and she is their mother. She got Zeka from a colleague and Robert from Mr. Ledgard or some other crookhead. But her son Robert was adopted by somebody whose wife was barren. But eventually she raised him and sent him to college, whereas Zeka lived in the street and dealing with drugs and stuff. Vera asks Marilia why Zeka called her by the name of Gal. She replies that he mistook her for Robert's wife, who looked exactly like her. 12 years ago, Zeka committed a crime and asked his mother to hide him at Robert's house, since she worked there as the manager. Robert and Gal had a daughter named Norma, but everything changed when Gal found Zeka in her house and fell in love with him. Together they ran away from Robert, but were involved in a car accident where Gal suffered multiple burns and Zeka ran away. Robert found a half-cooked Gal and despite the betrayal, he made every effort to save her. Marilia adds, Robert did a lot of research to help Gal and her condition gradually began to improve and lived in a dark room to avoid any mirror. But one day, Gal heard her daughter singing in the garden and decided to look at her. Gal saw her disfigured image in the glass and window. Then she decided to fall down to death from the window right at her daughter's feet. What their daughter saw traumatized the girl, and years later, she ended up as her mother. That same night, Robert allows Vera to sleep with him in his room and to intimate with her, but the girl stops him because of the fact that Zeka has severely traumatized her and asks to wait. Robert agrees, and after they fall asleep, Robert has a dream about the events that took place 6 years ago. Robert goes with his daughter Norma to a patient's wedding. Norma has recently been discharged from a psychiatric hospital, but the girl is still taking strong sedative to help her while talking to the guests. Robert loses sight of his daughter and goes in search of her in the garden, where he sees a young guy on a motorcycle quickly driving away. A little later, he finds his daughter, who starts screaming as soon as she sees her father. Here we are transported into the memories of Vera, who has a dream about a young guy named Vincent. Vincent works at his mother's boutique and is in love with a girl named Christina, who also works at the boutique and is a lesbian. One day, Vincent is invited to a wedding where he meets Norma. The couple go out into the garden to make love, but the girl has a panic attack and starts screaming and bites his hand. Vincent knocks the girl out and runs away. A few days later, Robert finds Vincent and rams his motorcycle, after which he puts the guy to sleep with a sleeping dart. He chains him in the basement. The police tells Vincent's mother that they have found his motorcycle on a cliff and that he has probably lost control and fallen into the sea, but the mother refuses to believe this and claims that Vincent is alive. Robert goes to check on his daughter in the mental institution, but Norma does not recognize her father and is terrified of all men. Robert keeps Vincent in the basement, starving him, but then moves him to a more comfortable room after washing him with the hose. A few days later, Norma, his daughter, decides to take a jump out of the window. At the funeral, Robert's colleagues try to convince him to take a vacation, but Robert refuses and reminds them that they have an operation scheduled for today. Robert chloroforms Vincent and prepares him for surgery. He forges his documents and invites his colleagues to do a surgery operation on Vincent's genitalia. Waking up after the operation, Vincent learns from Robert that he is no longer a man. Robert puts Vincent in his new room and gives him dilators to keep his new area always open, as the tissues may stick together and he will die. During one of the examinations, Robert confesses to Vincent why he kidnapped him. Vincent says he doesn't remember what happened that night since he had a bunch of pills and his memories are hazy, but Robert says he remembers everything perfectly. After many plastic surgeries, Robert turns Vincent into an exact copy of his wife and says that from now on his new name is Vera. Then the movie shifts back to the present time, where Robert and Vera gradually begin to improve their relationship and they think of starting to live as a normal family, which does not please Mirelia as she is wary of Vera. One day, Robert's former coworker comes to see him and tries to blackmail him to get Robert's clinic. He shows Robert a newspaper with Vincent's pictures in the missing person section. He threatens him on telling to the police that Robert kidnapped the guy and forcefully changing his gender. But Vera shows up and rescues Robert by saying she always wanted to be a woman and she loves him. Plus, she is here voluntarily. A little while later in the evening, Vera and Robert are about to make love, but the girl says she forgot something in her purse and goes downstairs to get it. But while there, she takes Robert's gun and kisses her old photo in the newspaper. Back in the room, she tells a surprised Robert that she has been lying to him all this time, after which she shoots him. Mirelia arrives at the noise and gets the same fate as her son. The next day, Vera returns to her mother's boutique. Seeing the girl's condition, Christina asks what happened, and Vera, with tears in her eyes, says that she is Vincent and tells what she had to go through. As proof, Vera shows the dress that Vincent wanted to give to Christina, but she refused to wear it. Christina believes the story, but the mother enters the room, and now Vincent is faced to explain the whole story from the start to make her mother to believe.